The question that we've all got to ask ourselves is this: is Toyboy truly one of the greatest designer releases this year? Or is it just that all of the other designer releases this year have been absolutely terrible, that it's elevated this fragrance to make it look as though it's something special? That is the conundrum that I have been facing. I've been back and forth with Toyboy. I've liked it, then I've not liked it, then I've actually sort of loved it, then I've not liked it again. That's why it's taken a little bit of time with me on this fragrance. But I think I've got it. I'm pretty certain I've got it. No, definitely. Yeah, okay, definitely. Yes, I've got it. I know what I know. Okay. So let's start with, would you like this? And that in itself, that question, made this review a little bit tumultuous, because I started to think as a reviewer, okay, who is this for? Who am I recommending this to? And this is quite clearly not the most mainstream fragrance in the world, and kudos to Moschino. It's a designer fragrance that has wanted to try something different. But when I started to think about the personality of who this could be for, it did start to get a little bit difficult. If you do not like the note of rose, get out whilst you still can. If you don't like florals mixed with incense and things of that nature, this isn't going to work for you. Ironically, if you like woody, clean, musky smells, or even woody aquatics, I would say maybe give this a chance, because this composition both has something that is woody, which is the incense, but it also has something that's fresh and aerated, like an aquatic. So I could actually see woody aquatic fans, people who enjoy things like Versace Eau Fraiche, for example, and that balance that it creates between the wateriness and the woodiness. If they like that sort of specific balance, then this could be something that they might enjoy. But is this a feminine fragrance? That has been the buzzword with this. Well, it's very feminine, don't you know? It's very feminine because it's got that rose sort of smell. And I think that the opening is most certainly on the tightrope of being either masculine or feminine, but then instead of going from either too masculine or too feminine, it just continues to walk the tightrope. But that's my personal opinion. You have to understand, I really enjoy fragrances like Dior Homme, which can be seen as very feminine, incredibly so. So for me, this fragrance, subjectively, is just walking the line between masculine and feminine. But if you're sensitive to anything that is even slightly feminine, even slightly floral, makes you just have the connotations of Barbie dolls and, I don't know, pink houses and all that sort of thing, then this is not going to be for you. It definitely has something, it definitely has an audience that is very specific and very niche. If your most favourite fragrance in the world is Ombre Leather by Tom Ford, then this is not really going to be working for you. If you're a fan of leathers and ouds and darker fragrances, this is just not going to work. You have to be open-minded to florals and more lighter and more feminine scents. On to the presentation. Now, people have been gobsmacked by this presentation by Moschino, but I look at it and go, well, actually, if you look at Moschino's past, this is probably their most tamest and most mainstream outing. They've had fragrances that literally look as though they're in Windex bottles, and when I was working in Harvey Nichols, people would pick up those Moschino Fresh bottles by the cap, thinking that you were going to spray it like a normal Windex sprayer. But of course, because they picked it off the cap, the bottle would actually fall out and it would smash to the floor. I'm not joking. When I was working in Harvey Nichols, there would be on average 2 to 3, sometimes 4 Moschino Fresh bottles destroyed by accident on a monthly basis. Moschino also even had an actual teddy bear as a fragrance bottle, which you could rip off the head. And so in comparison to those two, when you look at this, well, this is pretty straightforward. It's a cute, an eye-catching bottle, and it's been one of the biggest elements that has propelled this fragrance into stardom and into popularity. It's been one of the more controversial elements of the fragrance, including the advertising design that goes along with it and the adverts and the posters and things like that. But what I would say is this: it's a very successful design. This is not your run-of-the-mill, straightforward, standardized bottle. This is something that is unique. This is something that is a little bit out there, and I do feel cautiously tells you, the user, that you're in for something different. Now the scent. So, traditionally, I'm not the biggest fan of rose in the world. I find it, especially when it's just pure on its own, to be, I might as well just pour rose flower water on myself. I find it too floral, and I'm more of somebody who enjoys things that have depth. There are a couple of small exceptions, one being Oud Satin Mood by Maison Francisco Jean, and the second fragrance is the fragrance that has given me mixed feelings about this one. So let's start with the opening. The opening is absolutely extraordinary, and you can see me in real time react to it in my first impression that I did of this a number of months ago. I was blown away because it smelled like pure rose infused with Royal Oud by Creed, and I'd never really smelled anything like that before, that sort of combination, and I was absolutely blown away, and I thought, wow, okay, that could really work. The thing that has given me grief and the thing that has given me problems is the dry down, and as that opening fades, this rose and this fragrance becomes perpetually more synthetic, and the way that it solves that seems to be sort of by upping the sweetness, but then to me that becomes a little bit cheaper and a little bit more juvenile or younger, maybe a little bit too young. And as I was enjoying that dry down, I couldn't help but start to think of this fragrance. This is Rose Barbère by Maison Francisco Jean. It's quite funny actually. This is by Guerlain, actually, I should point out, but it was perfumed by Francisco Jean. But isn't that funny? Oud Satin Mood and this, both perfumed by Francisco Jean. If he did a selection of rose fragrances, I would no doubt love them. But this is a rose fragrance that has the same idea as Toyboy, which is a predominantly rose fragrance with some spices and some herbs. This is a little bit more incensey mind, and this is a lot more translucent and clean. But I prefer this. The reason being is that the rose in here is absolutely magnificent. It's watery, it's photorealistic, whereas this thing starts to get a little bit messy, it starts to get a little bit synthetic, and it becomes a little bit more fuzzy. And there were a couple of times when I wore Toyboy where I thought, you know what, I like the idea of this, but I think I'm just going to scrub this off and wear Rose Barbère. And that is problematic, to say the least. At one point I would have given this scent a 3 out of 5. However, my mindset did start to change. The more that I wore this, and the more that I accepted it for what it is, which is it's trying to be a rose fragrance and a different rose fragrance, whilst also trying to be a designer fragrance that will sell, I started to get it a little bit more. I'm not going to forgive the syntheticness of this fragrance. And if you really don't enjoy synthetic fragrances, not to say that this is the most synthetic fragrance in the world by any means, the problem is that I already have a rose that is a lot more naturalistic and a lot more realer that I would compare this to, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a problem for you. One of the things with this is that as it does dry down, that pink pepper does give it that sweetness which at first irritated me. But then I started to think about the look of the fragrance, the advertising campaign, and I thought, well, this is for a young person. This is trying to be youthful. This is trying to be energetic and exciting and maybe a little bit provocative. And then I started to forgive that sweetness. Once I started to manage my expectations of what this is trying to achieve, I did start to get it a little bit more. Overall, I do enjoy it, and I do really enjoy the idea of it. But there are problems, and there are problems that you should definitely know about before purchasing. First of all, the opening is not the dry down. The opening is promising a lot more of a spicier ride than a sweet ride. It's more along the lines of a very, very peppery Royal Oud-esque scent, but then as it dries down it becomes a little bit more juvenile and sweet. The only thing that continues is the rose. The second thing, as I've said, it is synthetic, and that is problematic, but I have enjoyed it, and I am starting to like it more and more. And now I'm starting to realise that this could actually do very well on me in springtime. It's done well for me in the autumn and the winter, but it doesn't seem to do too well against very dry skin. That is when this fragrance is, to me, the most synthetic. With a little bit of sweetness with sweat and warmth, this could do quite well. But overall, I like the audacity, hell, the temerity of this fragrance. I really do enjoy the opening, and I'm starting to acclimatise towards the sweet, rosy dry down with the pink pepper as well. Overall, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, but there are problems, as I've stated. Projection on me is a 3.5 out of 5. It is nearing quite a strong scent cloud and sillage. Longevity is a 5 out of 5, no doubt. This is beast mode. This lasts an incredible amount of time, not just on my skin, but with other reviewers that I've talked to about this fragrance. It looks as though mostly everybody is getting good performance, that I know at least, when it comes to longevity. And this is a fragrance that I put on actually earlier today, and it's still going strong. I don't really have to reapply it at all, and it's probably going to follow me into the night. Overall, this is a solid, intriguing, and interesting designer fragrance. And that is exactly what you and I really need right at this moment. Whilst the blue fragrances and the sweet tonka bean fragrances, neither of which I'm too offended by, whilst that fragrant civil war is going on, Moschino have decided to make something quite neutral but quite fantastic. I think that one of the reasons why it's getting so much praise is because it's a very colourful addition to the designer world, which is now incredibly black and white. But we can't blind ourselves to any of the problems that it has just because it's unique and just because it's different. It is quite synthetic. It can go quite young as it dries down. The opening of this fragrance is a considerable difference to the dry down, and that will just piss some people off. It's sort of irritated me, if I'm honest. But if you love rose, if you love incense, if you love fragrances that smell daring, smell interesting, and smell kind of sweet and sexy, whilst at the same time being floral, and have that interesting balance of something that is aerated, whilst something a little bit more woodier, incensey and harsh, then this is something you should definitely investigate. It's not for everybody. You've got to be clear on that. Do not waste your money on this if you really don't like it, or if you don't like it, don't just buy it because everybody's talking about it. Anyway, I'm the Fragrance Brace. Hope that you enjoyed this video. Hope that you got something out of it. Anyway, overall, I'm going to give Toyboy a 4 out of 5. Thanks.